Meron naman na gustong 2021, 22. So at this point, Your Honor, I cannot answer for the majority. I think we should have a majority caucus and decide how to move forward starting today after the changes and various interpellations and manifestations expressed by our members. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, District Sponsor. At any rate, at the proper time, Mr. Speaker, this representation considers proposing a 25-year franchise instead of until October 31, 2020. Just another manifestation, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of franchise. I tried to make a little research and came to a conclusion that the requirement of legislative action for the grant of franchises, especially in this case, franchise for ABS-CBN, is not actually a constitutional requirement. There is no provision in the Constitution that requires that there should be legislative grant of franchise. It is actually a power that is provided for by law. In other words, if we are asked, is there really a constitutional requirement? No. Unless there is a law, there is no need for a legislative franchise. And interestingly, Mr. Speaker, it appears that there is really no law that specifically grants Congress the power to grant legislative franchises to TV networks. Because the law that was applied by the Supreme Court was a law referring to grant of franchises to radio networks. And in one case, the Supreme Court said the law also applies to television. Mr. Speaker, I had contemplated on this even prior to the issue of the ABS-CBN's renewal of franchise. Contemplated on filing a bill removing from Congress the power to grant legislative franchises to public utilities and public services. Simply because it's an added burden. It's an added layer in the bureaucratic requirements. But the experience, Mr. Speaker, that we had with NTC gave me a change of heart. Because it appears that retaining the power to grant franchises in Congress serves as a mechanism for checks and balance. Kasi kung sa isang ahensya na lang, tulad na nangyari sa NTC, parang napaka-powerful na nila at wala ng checks and balance. I think it's appropriate that we retain that power in Congress, no, by retaining legal requirements and in fact strengthening the legal requirements for legislative franchises for public services and public utilities. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, sabi ni Speaker kanina, Mr. Speaker, buta academic na, pero gusto ko lang emphasize just for a minute that I beg to disagree that holding first and second readings on the same day is unconstitutional. The Constitution, I think, contemplates a situation where a bill is referred in the regular course to a regular committee, like the Committee on Legislative Franchises. Because the rationale under the Constitution, as ruled by the Supreme Court in one case, Kida versus the Senate of the Philippines, nasabi ng Supreme Court, ang rationale po dito ay upang the rest of the members of the House are duly informed of what transpired in the committee. So if this was referred to the regular committee, only the members of the committee had prior notice or had notice of what transpired there. The rest of the members of the House do not have notice. But in our case, in the case of House Bill 6732, this was referred to and considered by the Committee of the Whole, in which case everybody participated or had the opportunity to participate in the deliberation of the bill at the committee level, in which case first and second reading will already be conducted on the same day. What cannot be compromised, Mr. Speaker, is the third reading on a separate day, because the requirement in the Constitution is that there should be distribution of copies of the bill in its final form to all members 3 days before the passage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, distinguished sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I share the view of the distinguished gentleman from Agusan that there was no constitutional defect in the process that we have laid out in approving on first and second reading. However, I also would like to answer the points made by the distinguished gentleman from Agusan. Congress really was vested with the authority to grant a franchise based on constitutional law. Malino naman po dun sa Article 6, Section 24 na sinasabi na private bills shall originate exclusively in the House of Representatives. Private bills meaning yung origination clause provides that private bills must originate from the House of Representatives. Private bills in the legal dictionary is defined as any legislation that benefits an individual or locality. Anchoring on this, a legislative franchise is then under the exclusive jurisdiction or power of the lower house or Congress. And again, if I might cite jurisprudence, Santiago de Vinegracia versus Consolidated Broadcasting System, Inc. and People's Broadcasting Service, Inc., the decision cites clearly any person or enterprise which wishes to operate a broadcast radio or television station in the Philippines has to secure a legislative franchise in the form of a law passed by Congress and thereafter a license to operate from the NTC. So the power granted to Congress basically is constitutional, not statutory, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Sol Aragones of the 3rd District of Laguna to interpolate the sponsor of House Bill 6732, Deputy Speaker El Rey Villafuerte,
I
observing
remind the Rules Committee that during interpellation, the interpellator can only be recognized once and not twice, unless otherwise by leave of the House. Congresswoman Sol Aragones already interpellated honorable sponsors last Wednesday. And without leave from the House, she cannot.
Manifestation. Mr. Speaker, I move that the Honorable Sol Aragones, instead of interpellation, she will manifest this manifestation na ginawa ko last. She will deliver her manifestation.
Mr.
Speaker.
Just for reference, the Honorable Congresswoman Sol Aragones made a manifestation last week instead of conducting an interpellation, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, with leave of the House, I move that we recognize the Honorable Sol Aragones.
Honorable Sol Aragones is hereby recognized by leave of the House.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask our sponsor if you're willing to answer a few questions.
Yes, Your Honor, with pleasure.
Maraming salamat. Pero bago ang tanong, kwento muna. Ang pagbubukaso at ang pagbibigay ng prangkisa sa ABS-CBN ay katumbas ng pagbibigay ng ngiti sa 80 milyong Pilipinong tumututok sa istasyon sa araw-araw ng kanilang buhay. Dahil ang ABS-CBN po ang isa sa pangunahing pinagkukunan ng impormasyon, kasiyahan at inspirasyon sa panahon ng kalungkutan, lalo na sa panahon ng pandemya. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Sponsor, nais ko pong ipaalam sa inyong lahat na ang inyong lingkod ay dating empleyado ng ABS-CBN. 13 taon po na nagtrabaho ako sa istasyon. Marapat lamang siguro at hindi ko maialis na magmalasakit sa aking dating tahanan. Pero hindi ko nakukwento ito ngayon. Kwento na ho ito ng libo-libong mga empleyado na umaasa na magpapatuloy ang kanilang hanap buhay. Kwento na ho ito ng pagkakataon na mapakinggan ang iba't ibang panig sa isyong ito. At kwento na ito ng muling pagbalik sa himpapawid o sa ere ng istasyon na patuloy na magiging kaagapay ng gobyerno sa panahong ito ng pandemya. Kwento na ho ito na ngayon at hindi na ng kahapon. On that note, Mr. Sponsor, tulad nyo rin, tulad din ng milyong-milyong Pilipinong tumututok sa istasyon, kami rin ho ay naghihintay, pare-pareho tayong naghihintay ng happy ending. Kaya naman ho, noong nakaraang weekends, marami ho nagtatanong, Mr. Sponsor, kung posible, bagamat ito ho ay naitanong na kanina, para lang ho mapakinggan muli ng mga nanonood at nakikinig sa atin, posible ho ba ang tanong ng karamihan na sa halip na 6 months ay 25 years na ang ibigay? Ito ba isang bagay, Mr. Sponsor, na ikinokonsidera nyo sa ngayon?
Mr. Speaker, when I filed this bill, the original intention was really 5 months in order for ABS to operate while we were having an extensive hearing. But hearing suggestions, manifestations from our colleagues, Chairman Eric Yap, Congressman Lo Fortun, open naman po tayo na pakinggan na lang natin po ang franchise application at in order to decide whether to give them a 25-year franchise. So open po ang ako po sa ganyang klaseng amendment at this time po. Dahil bukas po ang aking pag-iisip, naririnig ko naman po ang sentimento ng ating mga kasama. So bukas po ako dyan na ma-amend po yan na diretso na lang pakinggan natin po ng 25 years yung term ng franchise application po ng ABS.
Para higit pa rin pong may paliwanag, Mr. Sponsor, bagamat ito'y nabanggit din ni Congressman Fortun kanina, kung ang tutunguhin ho para sa kaalaman ng ating mga kababayan, kung ang tutunguhin ho ay 6 months, ano ang magiging proseso para sa mas malinaw na kaalaman ng mga simpleng mamamayan? Kung 25 years naman ho ang tutunguhin natin, ano naman ang magiging proseso?
Well, yung original bill po na final, ang intention talaga is mag-operate muna ng until October habang pinapakinggan. And we will decide on or before October whether to give a 25-year franchise. But with regards to your proposal or your manifestation, at this time, hindi pa naman tayo nag-entertain ng amendment, we will consider a 25-year franchise. The process by which it will happen, I think we have to hear other members kung anong proposal nila. Kasi meron dyan, pag gusto pabilisin. Pero sa akin personally, kung pabilisin naman natin yan, para naman hindi natin ginagampanan ng ating constitutional duty na pakinggan ang lahat ng sektor. On the other hand, sinabi na since expired na yan, pakinggan na yung 25 years, pero they will remain to be closed. So these are options open at this point. Kailangan talagang, ang importante lang talaga ay magkaroon ng extensive, comprehensive, impartial, transparent na hearing. Can we do this in 3 months? Yes. Can we do this in 6 months? Yes. Siguro masasagot ko po yan ng malinaw pag talagang mag-umpisa na tayo into a full-blown hearing at maimbitahan yung mga gustong pro at against at malalaman natin kasi kung konti lang naman ang gustong magsalita, di ma-approve ng mabilis yan. Kung marami naman ang gustong magsalita, tatagal po. So these are questions that we have to address when we finally decide how to move forward, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Maraming salamat. Malinaw po ang inyong kasagutan, Mr. Sponsor. Ako po ay pabor at nagpapasalamat sa inihain yung panukalang batas kasama si Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano at iba pang authors nito sa pansamantala o provisional franchise na ibibigay sa ABS-CBN. Malaking bagay na po ito. Pero kung may kukonsidera ho ang 25 years, sabi nga ho ng millennial, Mr. Sponsor, baka naman kung may 25 years na ikukonsidera, baka ho mas happy ang ending. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Sponsor. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Maraming salamat po sa mga puntos na binigay po ni Congresswoman Sol Aragones.
Majority Floor Leader, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that we recognize Honorable Alfredo Garbin of Ako Bicol Party List to interpolate the sponsor. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Pito Garbin is recognized for his interpellation.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Magandang hapon ho sa inyo lahat. And to our distinguished sponsor, our Deputy Speaker from Bicol, Congressman Elio Budoferte. Sana ho, pakinggan nyo ako kahit konti. Salamat ho. Distinguished sponsor, Mr. Speaker, kanina ho napakinggan ko yung interpellation, mga katanungan ni Congressman Fortun. He mentioned about the powers of Congress to grant franchises. Although I defer to his proposition that this Congress doesn't have any explicit power to issue franchises, especially for mass media, I agree with the elucidation made by Congressman El Rey Villaferte that the same is constitutionally provided for. In fact, under Section 11 of Article 11 of the Constitution, which states that no franchise, certificate, and any other form of authorization for the operations of public utility shall be granted except to citizens of the Philippines or to corporations or associations organized under the laws of the Philippines, at least 60% of whose capital is owned by such citizen, except for mass media, which is 100% Filipino-owned, nor shall such franchise certificate of authorization be exclusive in character or for a longer period than 50 years. Neither shall any franchise or right be granted except under the condition that it shall be subject to amendment, alteration, or repeal by Congress when the common good so requires. So meaning, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, that the right to amend, alter, or repeal was given to Congress, and this power emanates from the very power to grant franchise. Kasi kung wala kang power to grant, wala ka naman power to repeal, amend, alter the franchise that was given to any entity. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, the power of Congress to grant franchise is constitutional. Now, let me go now to my point, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of the term of the franchise, which is Section 6. Marami ho akong naririnig kanina, and even sa labas, na tayo daw dito sa Kongreso, bawal mag-grant ng temporary or provisional franchise, of which I disagree. In fact, tatanungin ko ang distinguished sponsor na nowhere in the final form of the bill, which was distributed to us 5 days ago, did mention about temporary or provisional franchise. It speaks only of a franchise with a term until October 31. That was the bill subject of this deliberation today. Do you agree, Mr. or distinguished sponsor?
Yes, the title of the bill filed has no mention of provisional. The reason why we call it provisional temporary is because of the short period, Your Honor. But definitely, the title of the bill has no mention of provisional. It specifically states an act granting the ABS-CBN Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain television and radio broadcasting stations in the Philippines and for other purposes. Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
So, meaning, under the powers granted by the Constitution to Congress, we can grant 5 months, 1 year, 25 years. The only limitations is that under Section 11 of Article 11 of the Constitution is that in no case it should exceed or for a longer period than 50 years. Tama ho ba, distinguished speaker?
Tama po yan. Yan po nakalaad sa Constitution po, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker.
Ang nakasanayan lang, palaging 25 years yung ating ina-approve. But the Constitution doesn't limit us to approve a franchise with a term of 6 months, 5 months, 25 years, or a period longer than 50 years. So, sana malinawan yung ating mga kababayan na palaging nagtatanong at yung iba pang mga abogado na nagsasabi, nagpapa-interview sa ibang radio stations that what we're doing here is unconstitutional because we can only approve franchise with a term or a period of 25 years. Ang sinasabi ho ng ating konstitusyon, ng ating saligang batas, ang limitasyon lang ho is that we cannot approve a franchise for a longer period than 50 years. Dito na ho tayo, Deputy Speaker, distinguished sponsor, doon sa mga aligasyon. Since we intend to approve this one with a term of 6 months, barring any amendments for that matter that will be approved by the plenary, and barring also the outcome of the conference committee. Dahil kung kayo ay mag-agree sa akin, the private bill, which is the franchise, must exclusively emanate from the House of Representatives. But it does not say that the outcome, which is the final form of the law, must exclusively emanate from the House of Representatives. Tama ho ba? It is only the bill and not the law that should exclusively emanate from the House. Tama po ba?
Tama po. It should emanate here like tax laws, revenue laws, local bills,
Local bills, private bills, revenue, and tariff bills.
should emanate and originate from the House of Representatives, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker.
But it only speaks of the bill, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor. It does not speak of the final form of the law. So that, pagdating ho doon sa conference committee, we being a bicameral Congress, baka ho magkasundo yung Kongreso, yung House of Representatives and the Senate, to provide a longer term, whether it could be 25 years, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, or 2 years for that matter. Tama po ba, distinguished sponsor?
Tama po, malinaw naman po sa Constitution that it should originate from here, but the upper house or the Senate can institute amendments through the BICAM, part of the legislative process. We can propose to them until October, but it does not stop the Senate from proposing a longer or shorter term for that matter.
So they can propose or concur with amendments and they can propose a longer term. But it does not also preclude us in the period of amendment to propose a longer term before we approve House Bill 6732. Tama po ba, Mr. Speaker?
Tama po, malinaw sa Article 6, Section 4 that all private bills shall originate exclusively in the House but the Senate may propose or concur with amendment. So they can accept the bill in its final form with no amendments or propose amendments, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker.
So malinaw po yan, distinguished sponsor, Mr. Speaker. Now let me go to the serious allegation against ABS-CBN, which was already brought up by the great Deputy Speaker, Congressman Marcoleta. But you said earlier, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, that it should come, the discussion, the deliberation of those allegations pertaining to the double subsidiary, the citizenship, contractual obligations, violation of labor laws, should come at a proper time wherein, sabi mo nga po, distinguished sponsor, dapat magkaroon ng impartial and comprehensive hearing para doon. Tama po ba, distinguished speaker?
Tama po. The body can decide to hear this in the Legislative Franchise Committee, or this body can declare as a committee of a whole. In both cases, we can conduct an extensive hearing. We can invite resource persons via Zoom or actual public hearings, either to the Franchise Committee or as a committee of the whole, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker.
So it will come at the proper time, but the circumstance that we are right now is that we are prohibited from having a mass gathering that was provided for under the guidelines and regulations of ECQ, Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine. And so, Mr. Speaker, I propose that after we approve this franchise, we can avail of the mode of discovery, written interrogatories wherein we can send questions in the form of written interrogatories to agencies of the government, the ABS-CBN, NTC, BIR, Securities Exchange Commission, so that they can provide us written answers under oath about those allegations pertaining to violations of laws, contractual obligations, and the citizenship requirements, among others, of the applicant for the reward of franchise ABS-CBN. Siguro that's the way to go po, distinguished sponsor, that while we are awaiting for the new normal and that impartial and comprehensive hearing, we should avail of the modes of discovery provided for under the rules of courts. Because in fact, our rules provide that the rules of court is suppletory in character. Those that we see in the House rules can be supplemented by the rules of court, and that is one way of having it is the modes of discovery. Pag sila ay nagsumite na ng kanilang mga sworn declaration under oath, yung mga sagot nila, ahensya ng gobyerno, including ABS-CBN, then we can be properly guided. And then we can simplify the issues the moment we conduct a comprehensive and impartial committee hearing. Do you agree with me, distinguished sponsor, Mr. Speaker?
Well, several points were made. First, that mass gathering definitely is not allowed, but despite that, that fact, we are still able to conduct hearings. Right now, there's less than 50 here members, so we are still in compliance with protocols, while more than 200 of our members are participating to Zoom. So we can still do hearings, a comprehensive impartial hearing through this type of arrangement. Submitting position papers definitely is a must.
Yes.
In fact, we urge already those for and against to submit as soon as possible time. Why are they for the approval? Why are they against? And I think the Franchise Committee has started this. But again, we would like to reiterate to the public, those for and against should submit their position papers But I beg to disagree that we can simplify the issue because no matter what we do, this is a divisive, complicated issue. Kahit na ano pong sabihin natin, kahit no matter how we want to simplify and fast track, komplikado po ito and very divisive. What we can assure that what we need to do, therefore, is to really have an impartial hearing, hear all sides, so that when we decide, we can all unite as a nation that all voices were heard. That's what's important. Because pag nag-decide ka na for, galit yung against. Pag nag-decide ka against, galit yung for. So ito ang sitwasyon na talagang you cannot satisfy everyone. But what we can guarantee is dapat talaga magkaroon ng extensive hearing, extensive submissions and receipt of position papers at the soonest possible time. The manner and mode of the hearing will be further determined by the leadership on how to proceed. Ang importante, dinidiskusyon na. Nakakalungkot lang dahil nag-umpisa na tayo mag-hearing ng 3 o'clock, alas 6 na. Nakakalungkot lang, hindi natin natatouch yung mga issue on COVID-related stimulus package. Marami pong nagugutom, kailangan ng trabaho, kailangan ng ayuda. Ito na po yung sinabi ni Speaker na pag nag-umpisa na po ang ABS-CBN hearing, kawawa naman yung ibang mga panukala. And this is what's happening. Isipin mo, nag-umpisa tayo ng 3 o'clock, alas 6 na, di ko alam kung ano oras matatapos. Ang nakakalungkot lang, 90% of our members are focused on ABS, while I feel that there are more important and urgent issues that we have to discuss. But that's a reality. The reality is, pag ABS-CBN ang issue covered ng media, pagbalik probinsya, COVID-related, hindi na cover ng media. So yan lang po sana, pakiusap ko rin sa media na i-cover lahat na nangyayari sa Kongreso para naman nalalaman ng tao kung anong tunay na nangyari. But I agree with the distinguished gentleman from Ako Bicol. However, on most of the issues he has raised, but I beg to disagree that this is a simple issue. We can simplify the process, but the issue definitely cannot be simplified. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Thank you, distinguished sponsor. What I'm trying to say is, upon submission of all those written declarations of the government agencies, resource person where we cannot compel to attend a physical hearing because of our present circumstance, and at the same time, those allegations made against ABS-CBN, the applicant himself can submit written declarations under oath. Then, if we all receive those written declarations, certain statement under the modes of discovery provided under the rules of court, ang sinasabi ko ho ay somehow we can now simplify the issues and be guided accordingly doon sa mga kasagutan ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno, pati na yung mga nag-aaliga, pati na yung inaakusahan para patuloy-tuloy yung ating pag-aaral dito sa pangkisa na ito.
Magandang punto yan, but again kasi the reality is, papayag ba ang ABS na lahat ng akusasyon sa kanila ay sagutin na lang nila through documentary evidence or counter evidence under oath? Papayag ba sila? Papayag rin ba ang mga oppositor na wag na lang magsalita under oath at magsubmit na lang ng dokumento? So I think we have to balance. We have to determine what can be accepted as documentary evidence. We can just corroborate information through evidence. At the same time, kailangan rin talaga palagay ko na ang physical presence under oath ng mga resource person, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker.
Well, our aim here, distinguished sponsor, Mr. Speaker, is just the same. To have an impartial hearing, comprehensive, and to arrive at a facts, truthful facts, and the law on which this franchise will be approved. Truthful facts and the prevailing law so that we can arrive at a conclusive decision whether this franchise will be granted or approved. Panghuli na lamang po, distinguished sponsor, Mr. Speaker, we thank the leadership, Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano, for this timely action, acting as a committee of the whole wherein we are now deliberating on second reading and period of interpellation and debate. We expect the bill to pass the third reading, probably on Monday, and be sent immediately to the Senate next week for their deliberations also. Now, once this bill becomes a law, the unnecessary destruction caused by the NTC would now be removed. Consequently, we call properly ship back out attention to fight this pandemic, which is our fight against the COVID-19. Now, ABS-CBN would be able to continue its role in its fight by providing news entertainment and assisting the government through private sector initiatives. Also, once passed, the provisional franchise will not only give, or the franchise will not only give ABS-CBN fair chance to prove its worth before the Committee on Legislative Franchises and the Congress as a whole, but will also give its employees the much-needed employment security. While this development is good news, we have to be reminded that this bill only gives the applicant ABS-CBN a provisional franchise until October 2020. That it is imperative that the main renewal bills be acted upon without further delay upon resumption of Congress from CND adjournment on July 20, so as to remove any doubt. In the same manner, Congress should not forget NTC's treacherous and contemptuous conduct which adversely affected not only Congress and ABS-CBN but also the millions of Filipino viewers. We must also be reminded that it would take time before this bill becomes a law. Now, distinguished sponsor, while it is the joint sentiment of both houses of Congress, the earliest we think is that, barring any problem, could be signed into law by the President. We don't know yet kung kailan. Of course, meron pang publication. So, thus in the interim, and to cover the gap in time from the bill passage until it becomes a law, we implore the Supreme Court to take judicial notice of this official act being made by Congress, to take judicial notice of the Congress sentiment by extending the courtesy of the government by issuing a, hindi ko naman pinakialaman po, pero baka naman by taking judicial notice of this official act of the House of Representatives and of the Senate, baka naman pwedeng basihan na ng kanilang TRO. It is respectfully submitted that this is the proper course of action considering the sentiment of both houses of Congress, as well as the palpable falsity of NTC's order. To rule otherwise, or delayed ruling would not only deprive ABS-CBN of the much-needed allowance to broadcast its employees as a security of their livelihood, but would also deprive the Filipino people of a source of information and entertainment, possibly deprive them of ABS-CBN's social involvement in the fight against COVID-19. Salamat po, Mr. Speaker, and to our Deputy Speaker, distinguished sponsor, Congressman El Rey Villaferte.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Ismabal Osman, sa kababayan ko na taga ako Bicol.
Mr. Speaker, motion to suspend, Mr. Speaker.
Session suspended.
Patapusin na yung tatlo bilisan kasi may mga motions.
Speaker, with leave of House, I move to recognize Representative Arlene Brosas from the Gabriela Party List.
With leave of the House, Honorable Alim Brosas is recognized to interpolate the good sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, will the distinguished sponsor yield to a few questions, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it would be an honor.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Gabriela Women's Party would like to be further clarified regarding Section 4 of House Bill 6732, or the 10% share of the government on the paid advertisements of ABS-CBN. Pasimplihin po natin ito para maunawaan ng publiko. Bukod sa GMA7 at TV5, may ibang current franchise holder at broadcasting network ba ang nagre-remit ng 10% ng kanilang advertising revenues sa gobyerno? Sa kasalukuyan, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that. No, the Speaker has extensively answered that question, but ang inaano naman po, ang nire-refer po dito is public service time of 10% of paid commercials or advertisements. We're not asking for revenue. And secondly, this is really important as part of the reform. Importante po na ang gobyerno, lalo na pag in times of calamity and other circumstances, should be given time sa mga networks similarly situated. When I say similarly situated, for example, sino ba ang may national franchise? ABS, GMA, ABS previously, and TV5, na magkaroon ng ganitong provision. At meron naman po itong provision na to na nakalaad sa GMA franchise, which was granted by Congress, and sa TV5 franchise. So, itong 10% na to is actually a good provision. It will level the playing field. Hindi naman to hinihingi dun sa mga maliliit na may prangkisa. Ngayon lang po, nire-require po natin sa may national franchise, similarly situated. At na-mention naman po ni Speaker ang justification po nito. Maraming salamat po.
Yes, so, Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, sinasabi niyo po na GMA7, TV5, at ang i-request sa ABS-CBN ang meron.
Doon sa franchise po, Mr. Speaker, ng GMA and TV5, nakalagay na po sa kanilang franchise po itong provision na po ito.
So, Mr. Speaker, ginong sponsor, kasi if this is about upholding the Equal Protection Clause, bakit po hindi i-legislate ito in a separate bill as to cover all franchise applicants? Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor.
Because, Mr. Speaker, I think maganda ilagay na po. Nalagay na po ito sa GMA at TV5. So, guaranteeing the equal protection law, kung meron yan sa TV5 at GMA, dapat meron na rin yan sa ABS franchise. So, patas po, lahat po sila na national franchise, na equally situated, na meron na rin po nitong ganito. Kasi, kung merong public information drive ang gobyerno, isipin mo, nationwide agad ang coverage, lalo na kung ilaag po sa tatlong network na to. Yung suggestion po na pwede naman separate, pwede rin naman po, pero bakit pa natin i-delay itong reform na to na maganda naman? Bakit? Public interest, general welfare is assured in this provision. So, importante po naman na ang gobyerno mabibigyan ng ganitong karapatan dahil franchise is a privilege granted to them, yung frequency is owned by the government, so it's just right that they give back to the government, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished sponsor, why subject this provision on a case-to-case basis as contained in individual franchise bills? Katulad nga ng GMA7, TV5, ABS-CBN lang, kaya po sinasabi natin na po pwede namang separate Pwede namang kung gusto na talaga ng gobyerno, po pwede naman na separate bill gawin ito. No? Na i-include niya yung iba pang mga franchise bills. Mr. Speaker, ginong sponsor. Or po pwede rin sa ipasok ito, in fact, sa pagtalakay sa franchise bill, sa 25-year franchise bill mismo ng ABS-CBN at hindi dito sa provisional franchise na pinag-uusapan natin. Mr. Speaker, ginoong sponsor.
Lahat naman po yan pwedeng talakayin at maganda po ang mga suggestion. Pero nung nag-grant po yung TV5 at TV5 at GMA franchise po, I think the distinguished gentlewoman was already a member of the 17th Congress. And I think this was not discussed. So I think when this provision was present in the TV5 and GMA, I think it's just right, as part of equal protection, that if ever we give ABS a franchise, whether 6 months or 25 years, maganda isama na. Kasi ang tanong naman kasi, kung hindi natin isama ngayon sa 5-month franchise, sabihin, bakit hindi yung pa sinama? So I think, let's, kumbaga, when you read books about quality and doing things right, it's always suggested that do it right the first time. So let's do it right, whether 5 months or 10 years or 25 years, let's just do it. Dahil nangyari na rin po yan sa GMA at TV5, Your Honor, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, ginoong sponsor, if this will be a contention doon sa pagpapasa ng provisional franchise, might as well po, pag-usapan natin ito sa iba ding forum. So, sinasabi po natin na to be consistent with the administration, kung gusto nga po natin yung pag-administer nito ay maging maayos, or why not put it in a separate bill? Yun po yung yun po yung suggestion natin. Mr. Speaker, ginoong sponsor. But I won't belabor that. Ang gusto lang po natin sabihin, ipahayag na pwede namang separate bill ito. Bakit natin ipipilit kung magiging contention, Mr. Speaker, ginoong sponsor? And pwede din naman na sa 25 years natin ilagay, dahil na 25 years na ABS-CBN franchise natin ilagay sa pagtalakay dito, yung pag-include ng 10%. So, yun po yung gusto nating irehistro, Mr. Speaker, ginoong sponsor.
Mr. Speaker, alam niyo itong issue na to, not just this issue in Section 4, lahat ng pag-uusapan dito sa ABS, divisive contentious eh. Kasi isipin niyo po, pag hindi natin ilagay ito sa franchise kahit 5 months, ang sasabihin na naman ng tao, yung iba bakit hindi nyo nilagay? Dahil ABS-CBN ba yan? Dahil media giant ba yan? Naglabi ba sila dyan? Kaya nyo hindi nilagay yan? So what I'm saying is, whatever we do at this point, may magka-question. So I think, in line with that, para hindi rin tayo masita na may naglabi, may nakiusap, o we were influenced by outside forces na dahil malaki ang ABS, siguro parehasin na lang natin kung ano ang provision na to na nilaag sa TV5 at GMA para patas, equal protection for all, whether 5 months or 25 years. Because at the end of the day, whether you give 5 months or 25 years, they still have to comply with the 10%. Because if you don't put this in the 5 months, nasabihin, so 5 months lang pala, hindi na kami exempted na kami sa 10%. Eh baka may ibang mga talino dyan sabihin, di bigyan nyo na lang kami ng 5 months palagi para we can get away with the 10%. So that's just my logic based on the argument or recommendations as presented by the distinguished gentlewoman.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, ginoong sponsor, I will not go into further discussion doon sa Ang gusto lang po natin talagang i-register dito, pwede rin naman yung kung sinasabi niyo na pwede sa inyo na equal protection of clause ito na talaga namang kung nakalagay sa TV5 at sa GMA7, therefore ilagay sa ABS-CBN, okay. Pero ang sinasabi po, on the other hand, pwede din namang separate na legislation. Mr. Speaker, now I would like to go to my next. Actually, this is not a question. This is a manifestation. Mr. Speaker, with due respect to our colleague who have raised issues related to ABS-CBN and its request for franchise renewal, I suggest that we deliberate on the pros and cons once the House finally tackles the pending bills on the 25-year franchise bill. For now, let us stick on the intent of the Provisional Franchise Bill amid the exigencies of the times. Ang kailangan ngayon ay mabigyan ng katiyakan ang sambayanan na i-ere muli ang ABS-CBN sa Channel 2. Hindi sa YouTube o sa kung ano pa mang platform. No? Kailangan ng katiyakan para sa 11,000 na manggagawa at kanilang pamilya kung talagang seryoso tayo sa labor issues. With this, we strongly support the position to approve the provisional franchise of ABS-CBN on second reading. Mr. Speaker, ginoong sponsor.
Thank you. Maraming magaganda pong punto na nasabi po ang ating kagalang-galang na congresswoman. Lalong-lalo na po dun sa punto niya na pag dinggin ang 25-year franchise ay dapat malawakan, extensive. Maraming salamat. Then gusto ko rin kasi i-point out dahil while we want to protect the jobs of these 11,000, meron rin kasing mga issue na sinasabi, mga kasama ko dito, na doon sa 11,000 ba, ilan ba ang contractual doon? Di ba? Ilan ba ang permanente doon? Ilan ba ang endo na tinasabi doon na may end of contract? So while we want to protect the 11,000 employees, we want to further protect them by knowing, is ABS-CBN tolerating yung tinatawag na endo, yung perpetual contractualization? Kasi while we discuss about the 11,000, ilan ba talaga doon ang contractual? At ilan ba doon ang no work, no pay? Ilan ba doon ang walang regular contract, walang regular, yung sabi na security of tenure? So yung intention po namin talaga, nung final ito ay maka-ere sila habang hinihir. However, since we opened this measure back to the second reading, marami pang gusto mag-interpolate at mas lalong marami pang mag-amend. So right now, we are open for further amendments in due time that when the body is already, we are already in the period of amendments. But in this case, maraming salamat sa punto mo, at least nag-agree tayo na kailangan ng malawakang pandinig, if ever, na 25 years po ang prangkisang ibibigay. Salamat po, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, ginoong sponsor, siguro final words na lang po doon sa sinabi, kasi ang immediate po, may immediate effect for the 11,000 workers. Wala silang trabaho. So, yun po yung malinaw. Ngayon, sa usapin po ng sinasabi nga kanina, kaya we are calling for the pagkakaroon ng hearing dahil doon natin makikita yung pros and cons. No? Yung sinasabi niyo po na kailangan nila ng security of tenure, when in fact, napakarami pong mga kumpanya walang security of tenure, alam po natin yan, at ang informal sector natin ay napakalaki sa kasalukuyan. So, hindi lang po ito usapin ng isa lang no? ng ABS-CBN, but actually the entirety pa nga ng mga kailangan nating mga pag-usapan na labor issues. But definitely po, yung pros and cons, pwedeng pag-usapan doon sa pagtalakay na ng franchise bill. Meanwhile, meron po tayong kinakailangan ngayon na pag-usapan na provisional franchise para maka-ere, may trabaho pa rin, nandyan pa rin ang mga tao, at lalo na sa panahon ng pandemya na ang nakakarating na balita ay doon sa mga liblib na lugar ay ang mga katulad ng ABS-CBN. So maigi po sana, no? Maigi po sana, Mr. Sponsor, ginoong Speaker, na immediately ay maipasa itong provisional franchise. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, ginoong Sponsor.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, next to interpolate is Congressman Naresco. If we could recognize our Honorable Congressman, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Tadaresco is recognized to interpolate the good sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Sponsor, DDS LA. I would like to manifest, Mr. Speaker, that in the light of the urgency of this COVID and post-COVID scenario, that this bill be referred to the committee, Mr. Speaker, for the following reasons. There are so many allegations about the franchise of ABS-CBN, and we cannot just make haste and approve this bill, Mr. Speaker. I may be speaking in behalf of the silent majority when I say that ABS-CBN should make clear why their DBP loans were written off. Also, ABS-CBN should make clear why they max out their balance sheet by borrowing a lot of money from private banks. Two, why does ABS-CBN say that they have 11,000 when Dole's figure is some 4,400? Also, one of their spokeswomen said over international TV, she claimed about 4 to 5 times that they had 11 million workers. Also, Mr. Speaker, the one franchise gave birth to 65 subsidiaries, and these are not minor allegations. These are real. There are also legal issues, Mr. Speaker. One is the word provisional. Another is what is happening in the Supreme Court, the processes and procedures to go through the approval of 65 franchises. The donations given over several decades, have they been accounted for? I myself, Mr. Speaker, I do not know why I did not get any acknowledgement receipts during my donations during the calamities. Again, Mr. Speaker, the shaping of the national psyche cannot be dependent on one dominant player, particularly if this dominant player is in other fields of energy, formerly water, formerly distribution of electricity. Again, Mr. Speaker, I do not have enough knowledge to make a sound judgment whether I will vote yes, no, or abstain. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I would rather that this Congress concentrate on the bills on health, education, livelihood, and agriculture on the post-COVID scenario. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the Honorable Kuya Jojo C. Alvarado of the 1st District of Bulacan for his interpellation. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Jonathan Kuyang Alvarado is recognized from province of Bulacan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, will the sponsor yield to some questions?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, kanina po ay may mga mungkahi na gawin ng 25 years ang ibibigay na prangkisa sa ABS-CBN. At kung papayagan ng sponsor na tanggapin ng 25 years extension to operate, ay mawawala po ang pangunahing adhikain naming mga tagapag-akda o nag-akda na magkaroon ng patas at komprehensibong hearing na hindi dapat lumagpas sa October 31, 2020. Kung magkakaganon, Mr. Speaker, hindi na natin mapapakinggan ang saloobin ng mga taong nagpahayag ng kanilang oposisyon sa ABS-CBN, katulad ng mga empleyado na hindi naging regular, mga kandidato o kandidato na hindi pinalabas ang political ads noong nakaraang eleksyon, ngunit tinanggap ang bayad. At hindi rin masasagot ang mga isyu kagaya ng pagbebenta ng black box na marahil ay sakop na ng House Resolution 00853 na ifinail ni Congressman Eric Yap, Congressman Tolentino, at Deputy Speaker Duterte. Mr. Speaker, sa kabilang banda, meron din namang mga naghain ng pagiging pro-ABS-CBN. Kasama na po sa suporta sa ABS-CBN si Congresswoman Biolago, Congressman Jericho Nograles, Deputy Speaker Arenas, Congresswoman Tambunting, Congresswoman Aragones, Congresswoman Santos Recto, Deputy Speaker Dong Gonzales, Deputy Speaker Pimentel, Congressman Liachon, Congressman Rodriguez, Congresswoman Ramirez Sato, Congresswoman Brosa, Sarate, Gaite, Colyamat, Castro, at Ilago, Congressman Go, Congresswoman Ligarda, Congressman Delmar. Mr. Speaker, kanina po ay paulit-ulit na binanggit ng ating distinguished sponsor na sana ay maipahayag ang mga punto ni Deputy Speaker Marcoleta sa isang hearing. Tama po ba, Mr. Speaker? Gentlemen?
Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, ang intention talaga, palagi ko po ito sinasabi, dapat magkaroon ng impartial, comprehensive, extensive, transparent hearing at kailangan marinig lahat. So whether that is through a provisional franchise up to October or 25 years, ang i-discuss natin, subject for siyempre at the right time yan ang gusto ko pong mangyari at palagay ko yun rin po ang gusto ng karamihan ng ating mga kasama. So at this point, we are now in the period of interpellation. Yung amendments should be discussed at the right time. But again, gusto ko lang i-reiterate, kasama ko po si Congressman Jonathan Alvarado as one of the principal authors ng House Bill 6732 granting a franchise up to October 31, 2020 sa ABS. Kaya you should all agree na dapat kung magkaroon ng hearing whether up to October, before or beyond, dapat comprehensive, impartial. So yan lang po ang dapat malinawan ng lahat. Dahil kung di natin gawin po yan, hindi po natin ginagampanan ang constitutional mandate natin dito sa Kongreso. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, dear sponsor, gaano katagal po kayang aabutin ng isang komprehensibo at patas na hearing para sa prangkisa ng ABS-CBN, Mr. Speaker?
Well, hindi natin talagang masasagot yan 100%, but yung intention ng bill ko natin, Mr. Speaker, is mag-set tayo ng timeline by October. So it does not mean naman na may timeline tayo na October, madidesisyonan yan. But that is the deadline we have tried to set among ourselves dito sa mga co-authors na sana madidesisyonan na yan whether to deny or grant the franchise. At gusto ko lang po linawin sa lahat, hindi po ibig sabihin na mabigyan ng provisional franchise yan na ako pabor, hindi rin ibig sabihin na ako kontra. Kailangan madesisyonan yan dahil sa tamang pandinig. Ngayon, may nagsuggest nga, bigyan na lang ng position paper, pasubmitin na lang lahat. Ang tanong ko naman, payag ba ang ABS? Payag ba ang 4 at again? So, in relation to the timeline, I cannot answer that. We can set a timeline that we want to follow, but maraming factors po yan. Una-una, we are in the new normal. We cannot, dati pwedeng 10 resource person, sabay-sabay, pwede. Ngayon siguro hindi na pwede yan. Pwede tayong mag-marathon hearing umaga hanggang gabi. Pero yung iba naman kasi may curfew pa, so hindi mo naman pwedeng i-require mag-hearing beyond the curfew. So maraming factors po yan na dapat i-consider. So at this point, I cannot answer that. All we can do is set a deadline for among ourselves and we'll try as much as possible to follow that, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor.
Mr. Speaker, sa araw
Session
pong ito,
suspended. Session resumed.
Mr. Speaker,
Proceed.
I would like to manifest at gusto ko pong ipahayag sa lahat na sa kabila ng problema natin sa COVID-19, sa dami ng panukala na kailangan nating ayusin dito sa Kongreso, kagaya ng panukala ng Cures Act, Economic Stimulus Bill, at ilang pang mga bill tungkol sa social amelioration na talaga namang kinakailangan natin sa panahong ito, ay kumukonsumo ang usapin ng ABS-CBN franchise ng napakalaking oras sa ating lahat, lalong-lalo na sa napakahalagang punto ng epidemya o ng pandemya dito sa ating bansa. Mr. Speaker, sakali lamang po na maamyendahan ng 25 years yung pong aming unang i-final na hanggang October 31 lamang 2020, sana po ito po ay maibalik muna sa committee o I move to refer House Bill 6732 to the Committee of Legislative Franchises para doon po magkaroon ng mas maayos na hearing sa bawat isa, patas at komprehensibo. Pantay-pantay para sa lahat at walang hinahadali na proseso para lamang sa prangkisa ng ABS-CBN, Mr. Speaker.
Noted the manifestation, Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, of the distinguished gentleman from Bulacan.
We'll deal that on the proper time. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, interpellators have expressed their intention, and I move that we suspend the consideration of House Bill 6732.
Any objection? The chair is none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Speaker, I move that we
Mr. Speaker, I move that we now proceed with the additional reference of business and request that the Secretary General be directed to read the titles of bills and resolutions. So move, Mr. Speaker.
Any objection? The chair is none. The Secretary General is hereby directed to read the title of bills, resolutions, communications, and refer it to the proper committees, for referral to proper committees.
Additional reference of business resolutions, House Resolution 875, resolution urging the House of Representatives through the Defeat COVID-19 Ad hoc Committee and Committee on Overseas Workers Affairs to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the plight of health workers affected by the deployment ban in relation to COVID-19 pandemic. Representatives Gaite, Zarate, and Kolyamat.
The Committee on Rules.
House Resolution number 876, resolution directing the Department of Education, Commission on Higher Education, Technical Education Skills Development Authority, Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases to immediately suspend implementations of DepEd Order Number 7, Series 2020, halt the physical opening of classes on August 24 for the school year 2020 to 2021, and prohibit face-to-face classes and other physical school events and activities. Representatives Gonzales Aurelio.
To the Defeat COVID-19 Ad hoc Committee.
House Resolution number 877, resolution urging the Secretary of the DILG as the Vice Chairman for Preparedness of the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council to direct all local government units to prepare their evacuation centers in view of COVID-19. Representative Pimentel.
The Defeat COVID-19 Ad hoc Committee.
House Resolution number 878, resolution expressing the highest appreciation and profound gratitude of the House of Representatives to all healthcare workers and frontliners. Representative Stan Angelina.
To the Defeat COVID-19 Ad hoc Committee.
House Resolution number 879, resolution directing the Committee on Energy to investigate in aid of legislation the sudden big spike in Meralco electricity rates and bills despite the overcapacity of electricity supply. Representative Zarate, Gaite, Kolyamat, Castro Franz, Brosas, and Elago.
The Committee on Rules.
House Resolution number 880, resolution expressing the profound condolences of the House of Representatives to the family of Honorable Maria Teresa Aquino Oreta, former Senator and former Representative of the Lone District of Malabon, Nabotas. Representatives Cayetano Alan Peter, Romualdez Ferdinand, and Abante.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move for the change of referral of House Bill number 6703, providing for a Balik Probinsya program from the Committee on Housing and Urban Development to the Committee on Agriculture and Food.
Any objection? The chair is none. Motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, also to adopt House Resolution number 880, expressing the profound condolences to House of Representatives to the family of Honorable Maria Teresa Aquino Oreta. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Any objection? The chair is none. House Resolution 880 is adopted. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we suspend session until 3 p.m. tomorrow, May 19. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Session suspended until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, May 19, 2020.